Warning. Hashtag DDP Live is for an adult audience. Hashtag DDP Live may contain material that may be unsuitable for sensitive ears. If you are easily offended, run to your panic room now. Listener discretion is highly advised.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
It is the hashtag DDP Live here in the Longbox.FM studios, brought to you, of course, by our last week's guest, Dan Riley, who left a tremendous amount of beer, which was great for the weekend, which I'll get into momentarily. The show, this is a special one that we're throwing to you tonight, and again, we'll explain that. We want you to be able to participate, and you can hit us up in all the awesome ways. They're listed up on the screen. You can call us 492-0450. We do have our Skype active, and we are live tonight on YouTube, on the Facebooks, on Twitter. There's a lot of ways. If you can't find us, then you just don't know how to occupy the internet. To carry on with last week's show, we had Dan Riley in, and he left a proposal out there for everybody. Free food. Very easy. You're going to get a free hamburger from Riley's Brew Pub. All you got to do is hit up the hashtag DDP Live Facebook page, give your info. You can just send it a message so it's not blasted to the world, and we will send you something, a coupon, something, and you can actually sit and eat, possibly with Dan Riley himself. He's got great stories. Remember, he's the man who beat HSR, so a hero in some of our minds. Tonight, we're also giving away tickets to a show, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, Volume 12 at Fulton 55. Ken Lewis will be a guest next week, is putting on that show, and I'm actually hosting for the first time doing comedy, so I hope I don't screw it up or kill it super bad. We'll see. I'm really nervous about this. And if that's not enough, we're giving away tickets to see the premiere of Brick Madness. A local filmmaker has put together something that's being broadcast or premiered at Tower Theater September 9th, so we'll get into how you can win those later on in the show. Tonight's show being what it is. Chris is going to be coming in a little bit later. Anthony's out in San Francisco, so it's me and Cody running the ship tonight. And, I think it's all right because we got something heavy that we're dealing with. Now, our guest tonight started off, as we were putting this all together, with Steve Brandau, City Council member, District 2, who has been recently working really hard to be an awesome dartboard for the entire internet, or the Facebook at least, throwing down the homeless camping ban that obviously caused a lot of attention and now has been passed and will be in effect in about 30 days. How are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I think I've recovered most of my wounds.
You took a lot of shots.
Yeah, I did. Twitter and Facebook, busting loose.
Did you? I was thinking, there was a point I was thinking about a game tonight where we were just going to read mean tweets towards you.
Yeah, we need like 5 hours, though.
I was just rolling through them like, I don't want to say that one on there. That's really tough.
Right. If we took out the ones with F-bombs, it'd be a little bit shorter.
There's the filter right there. So tonight, this is our main subject. We're going to be talking not only the homeless. We've done this before in the past. We had the Poverello House coming in. We had, actually, that was Blake Taylor joining us that night, too, from KMJ. This is going to go a little bit in a different angle on the topic because, well, I'll hold off for a second. Our other two guests that we have here tonight, and this was just kind of, it was put together last minute, and it's fun being a little guy who runs out of his house, and I'm talking to someone that has to run it up the flagpole through administration, and I was like, oh, it's just little old me, but cool, all right. We got one of the tops, the Director of Behavioral Mental Health Services, Dawan Utecht, right?
Director of Behavioral Health Services.
Okay, yes, what she said. You are near or at the very top as far as the mental health services, the Fresno County system goes, so you know a lot of the day-to-day workings, correct?
I hope so.
I hope so, too. I'll need your help tonight on this. and with you, because I was specifically asking, I wanted someone hands-on, day-to-day with the people that we're talking about, and that's an important phrase, the people that we're talking about, as I'm sure, Steve, you understand that phrase now. We got Karen Markland coming in. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
We're going to go.
Excellent.
So that's the tonight's show. This is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be discussing all of the mental health services, what we need, what can be done better. We're going to be discussing the homeless encampment ban, all of that. Let's take a quick break, hit our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to go straight into this topic. And again, opening phone lines. You guys can call in if you have something positive to add to this. I'm going to be pretty harsh on the phone tonight, so behave. That's all I ask from everyone tonight. This is the hashtag DDP Live here on Longbox.FM. You're listening to the hashtag DDP Live here on Longbox.FM. The hashtag DDP Live here on Longbox.FM. Behind the scenes, I'm sure you guys saw my eyes darting all over the place as we re-upped the whole system and got all the bugs. We're trying to get it out of it. So every little thing that doesn't fire exactly as I hope, it's like, what's happening? Like a dog following anything shiny. Tonight's show, the important stuff that we're going to be talking about. The homeless encampment ban is what started this. Homeless camping ban, my bad.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of your conversations on KMJ, Steve. I've seen a lot of the Facebook videos that you've put out, and I've seen everybody talking. So I'm excited to get into this. Can you start off with a little bit on what the homeless ban was about?
So,
the camping ban.
Yeah, it's really called the unhealthy and unlawful camping ban. It doesn't really have the word homeless in it, but I'd be a little bit disingenuous if I didn't say that a lot of the behaviors targeted are things that we see a certain portion of our homeless population participate in. So it's really doesn't have the word homeless in any part of the actual the ban or the policy that I brought forward. It's really about behaviors, which are camping behaviors, pitching tents, cardboard structures, bathing in public, preparing food in public, those types of things. In the conversations, we talked about people going to the restroom in public. But the truth is, in all reality, that's already unlawful. It wasn't part of the ban, but it got kind of thrown in as, in the conversation. But in the city of Fresno, we're seeing a lot more of that than ever. And all of these behaviors we've been pounded on in our council districts. And so I serve in Northwest Fresno. I'm hearing about it almost constantly in Northwest Fresno from two groups, from residents who will have some people camping and pitching tents and just living in an open lot next to them that makes them feel uncomfortable when their kids are walking to and from school, that type of thing. And then the second group of people that we heard a lot from were business owners. And really about 2 months ago, a group from the Chinatown business community came to city council. There were about 12 to 15 of them. They were very organized. They took their 3 minutes each in a row. So it was about 40 minutes of folks telling us that, are you guys even aware that there's a problem in our community? And of course we were aware. We're getting pounded by these issues, but listening to those folks, and they're not even people that I represent. They're on the exact opposite end of town. But I told my staff after that meeting was over, we're going to have to address this issue. So starting about 2 months ago, we started looking at things that we thought might help, might make an impact, might really help our business owners and some of our residents. And so we came up with this No Camping Act, and it really targets those behaviors. So an example is on Blackstone Avenue. The taxpayers in Fresno County and the city of Fresno are spending a lot of money revitalizing Blackstone Avenue. We want to make it a great place for people to shop and do all the commercial activity that Blackstone's known for. And yet, within 100 yards of Blackstone Avenue, we'll have encampments. And these could be 2, 3, 4, 5 tents pitched next to each other. Maybe it's just one. But usually there's a huge mess that goes with that tent. And then a lot of the folks that are doing that come out during the day. They harass customers. They harass the business owners. Sometimes you'll see them using electricity, breaking into electrical boxes, we had an example of breaking into a water main, doing some vandalistic type, crimes. But really, in the end of the day, harassing customers and really making a dent in the ability for these businesses to really be successful. It's happening all over. That's an example. And so I've heard about it from all over town, from Northwest Fresno, where I take the calls personally. I mean, my staff takes the calls, but where we get those calls personally in Northwest Fresno, through the Tower District in the center of town, around Manchester Center in the center of town, all the way to, like I had mentioned, Chinatown and the folks in South Fresno. So all across the town, we've been pounded. I felt like I had to do something to answer the call.
Now, one thing I did, I think I caught it with, I think you were on with Ray, and to me, I don't like the ban, not because of any of the reasons you were hearing. To me, it's a fringe. It's addressing a symptom. It's not a core. And this is just kind of how I think about problems. How do you fix the core problem? And this is where we're going to head in this conversation, I'm hoping. We're just addressing this to get out the beginning part.
For sure.
Man, I totally got off trail. Ray Appleton, when you were talking with him, it sounded like part of the reason the ban was put down is you're attacking not the people, but the camp themselves. And a way to possibly get around the annual homeless lotto ticket that Fresno likes to give out. Well, whenever we do a cleanup of anything, there's an inevitable lawsuit, and we pay out someone. It's a really expensive way to shelter somebody, some single person. So it sounded like, and I don't know if I just pulled this in myself, but the part of the ban was set up not to attack or criminalize the person, but the activity, not of being homeless, but of camping in a public spot.
Yeah, and we've learned a lot. Like you said, the city of Fresno's been sued for the way that we've dealt with the homeless in the past. So you have to learn. Maybe there's a different way of doing that. And so we try to incorporate all the right language. All of this stuff was vetted. It's really based, Chris, on a similar ordinance from the city of Sacramento, which in 2015 was sued and originally lost the lawsuit. Then it went on appeal, and the city of Sacramento and their no camping ban prevailed in court. So we hope, since we patterned it off of an ordinance that had been successful and tested, we hope that that would alleviate some of that same desire in the city of Fresno to try and stop the ban in the court system. But you never know. Cities like Fresno get sued all the time for all kinds of stuff, so it might happen.
Oh, that's good to know, right?
Isn't it? Yeah. Well, we're a sue-happy society, right?
Yeah, we absolutely are, and it's getting tiresome. Now, kind of that fully explains that. I do want to talk about the reason our other guests are here and how to transition to this. In the process of watching your Facebook in the last 3-4 weeks and seeing what everybody's attacking, I did take the time, and I'm skittish now. The last couple months, I've been real skittish to pop in with anything political minded in conversation because it just goes bad, man. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting people to just jump out of my phone and punch me in the face or something. But a lot of people very angry, and I'm trying to see the left versus the right, and I know I'm being generic on terms here, but I think the more liberal-minded have the heartfelt, they view these people as people, And they're saying that what you're saying, Steve, you're calling them human trash. The right side of you, they still care about people. It's just done in a different manner, different mindset. They say that conservative people are a little less empathetic, more logical ones and zeros. And so it's like a relationship, man. Cotty here, her and I want the same thing, but it seems like I'm always wrong, because at least that's what she tells me. So we're not communicating possibly in using the same words, and that's part of where we're going to hopefully establish some things tonight, because Clint Olivier has gone through this, homeless and vagrant. I remember that was a thing. Some of the things I popped into on some of these message boards, though, I just snuck in there real quick with does anybody have any suggestions of how we can do this better?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. The keyboard warriors go silent. Not even a response, not a like, nothing. And it's back to F you, Steve, left and right. You know, and so that's part of why I wanted to do this show tonight. When I said I'm not a fan of the band, only because it's a French thing, I'm very interested in talking about and attacking the core issue. And now this is where our guests come in tonight, Dawan and Karen, when it comes to Fresno County mental health services. Now, we need to, I think at this point, because being in conversations the last couple days, define who the homeless is. I think that's one thing, because, I think a rough estimate, 30% of homeless are mental health, have mental health needs. And excuse me here if I'm being too rough or not polite enough on it. Then you have a portion that's a substance abuse, which is a separate category. I know a lot of people want to say that that's mental health too. We're separating the substance abuse people and the mental health needs people, and then just the professionals, the people who just choose to do this. These are the people I think are more willing and active in destroying public or private property, willing to do whatever it takes to do their thing, and those are the ones that we do want to just escort them on out. Wherever they want to go, just don't be here, to be cold about and blunt. But let's start with Dawan. Your end of everything. Can you give us from your knowledge or how you would like to handle, or how you see your role, the mental health services, what's lacking, what's needed, and to address the problem here? Because we have someone that can help us, one of 7 plus a mayor. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get something positive here. So go for it.
Sure. We have to go back a little bit to help the listeners understand what the Department of Behavioral Health Service is and what we do. So we're a county behavioral health department, and essentially our mission and the reason we exist is to provide mental health and substance use disorder services for individuals in Fresno County who have Medi-Cal or who are indigent. Further, we also have responsibility for coordinating a crisis system of care for individuals in a mental health crisis. So whether you have Medi-Cal, you're indigent, or you have insurance, it is through mental health laws and some of the services we provide. So to that end, we have, for instance, a crisis stabilization unit here in Fresno County. It has 2 parts, for adults and for children. And it's 24/7, and when someone is in a mental health crisis, they might go directly there, they might go to a hospital emergency department and then come there if they have a medical need that needs to be cleared. So that's one service that we oversee and provide. One of the things we've learned in the last few years, and I've been in this role a little over 4 years, is that we provide a lot of services that the public isn't even aware are our services. So just a quick example, at the city council meeting when this ban was being discussed, one concept that was bandied about was that in lieu of a citation or an arrest, an individual could go to a MAP point. And in the same conversation, the city council members were lamenting that they didn't know where the county was in this situation. Why weren't we providing social services? Well, what they didn't realize is that we run the MAP points. Those are services that we actually pay for and through contractual arrangements run. And so there's a lot that we do that the public's not aware of, and that's part of where we need to do a better job, is helping the public understand the vast array of services that are available that are through the county. And so...
quick question, just talking about, going back to the ban. It was set up, if you get caught, you basically, I think everybody thinks you're getting put into the car and you're sent to jail. And it's not true in that sense. You have the option of seeking out a service, which now we're hearing, Dawan, you are part of that service. Is there any way for it to be set up where a social worker, somebody from the county, is immediately contacted at the same time that the cop is dealing with the person there on the street, is there enough resources for that? Instead of just immediately, because you never know what you're dealing with when you, like Cotty is just homeless, we got into fights. Now she's out there with her camp, and cop swoops up to pick her up. She's angry and crazy because, she's got a very bad fiance, and maybe he doesn't know the best way to deal with it, so she's just going to get swooped up and taken to county jail, versus, someone like you or Karen that'd be out there who could help explain to her that she chose wrong and help get her to the right position. Is that possible?
Well, it's going to be a multi-part answer. So there are a variety of resources in the county, and we'll focus on the city of Fresno because that's where the camping ban has been implemented or will be implemented. There is a Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, which is a federally mandated and funded program that is a multitude of agencies, including the Housing Authority and some of our community-based organizations, and their entire job is homeless outreach. That's what they do. And they're funded to reach out into the community where we might have homeless. That's a group that conducts the point-in-time count, and we have some resources in that as well. We have staff that are housed at the Pavarello House, and they reach out into the community of homeless. We have some of our clinical staff that are available to go out there. So there are some resources. We are getting ready to implement an evidence-based practice in Fresno, in the city of Fresno, and hopefully the city of Clovis as well, called Crisis Intervention Team Approach. And that's where some of our clinicians will be paired with police officers to help with individuals in crisis. And so that's for someone who, how we define a crisis is a danger to oneself or others. And you can, if you meet that criteria, then you can be placed on a 5150 hold, which is an involuntary 72-hour hold for an individual to receive assessment and treatment for their mental health crisis. Homelessness is not a mental health crisis. And so that's one of the challenges, is that it's voluntary for someone to choose to receive services. And having a mental illness or mental illness symptoms doesn't always rise to the level that someone meets that criteria for an involuntary hold or being taken to our crisis stabilization unit or an emergency department or being admitted to an inpatient unit, which we have here in town. And so people have rights, and they have the opportunity to choose not to partake of services. And Karen can speak to this a little bit. I mean, when we are successful in getting individuals who maybe don't want services, and we won't focus just on homeless because this can happen even with people who are housed, it can take multiple attempts. And when we take someone who's homeless and we engage them in treatment and we're able to work them through the process of getting housing, it takes a lot of work to keep them housed. Mm-hmm. And so, can someone go? Yeah, there's people out there every day. When the police department had their homeless task force, they would try and connect people with services and take them, either bring someone there who could help them or take them for treatment. It's
Steve,
complicated.
Yeah. Do you have something?
I wanted to add to what Dawan had said. In the city of Fresno, we also, and in the city council, I believe it was about $500,000 we spent on a new program last year called Hero. And it kind of answers directly what you're talking about. So say there's a homeless person, or really, as Dawan said, somebody that has a mental illness. They may or may not be homeless, but they're doing something out in public. And sometimes one of the worst type of person that they're going to react to is a uniformed police officer, right? So we do have, now, to answer your question, we don't have the resources to do everything. But we have about 8 caseworkers. They're called the Hero Team. They go out, and an officer might be the first person to interact with somebody who may or may not be doing something wrong, or might be a public nuisance, or might be somebody that could harm themselves. So they could get a hold of one of the Hero workers. They might have to stay there 20, 30, 40 minutes. The Hero worker could show up and begin a relationship type of encounter, and enactment there, and then the officer's free to go do something else. So we are trying some things like that to where it's not always an officer that's confronting these problems, and I would love to double the size of that program, right, and get more caseworkers, less officers, but still at the end of the day, the officers have to answer an awful lot of these calls, and we don't probably have enough caseworkers to cover all of those type calls.
Hold on to that, because I'm gonna hit you with a challenge here a little bit later. Sorry, you sit on the chair. You got to take this.
I understand.
There's another player in this that I do want to bring in, and Karen, you're going to be the voice for them. The people, the homeless, and this is why I specifically asked. I wanted somebody who has hands-on, because administration, no slight on you, but you're not necessarily out there day to day rubbing elbows and dealing with it, and that's just where I wanted. And Karen, thank you for being on here. Be the voice of the homeless. Tell us who they are, and a little description, because I think this is I think why people were mad at you, Steve, because Homeless Band just put everybody into one pile, and people get mad about that. And so to do this justice, let's talk about who they are. Karen?
Great question on who they are. And one of the ways that we can talk about who they are, I will throw out a challenge that, just as Dawan talked about, there's an annual count that is done through our Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, which is our point-in-time count. And if you're not familiar, or if I'm repeating something you already know, in short, point in time is a requirement for all counties across the United States. And it is literally that point in time count. It happens over about a 4-day period where we create teams through the Madera Continuum and through the Housing Authority, where we dispatch out into all of the Fresno City and Madera and literally do counts of the homeless. So we are put into zones. We have a survey that we ask all of our individuals, and we are out in teams, and we are literally walking streets, alleys, canals, neighborhoods to introduce ourselves and to speak to individuals who identify as homeless. And so it's an interesting, and I really challenge anybody in this room and anybody listening to participate. Every year it is run with volunteers. And if you really want to know who's homeless, best way to find out is to be part of that point in time count. So to kind of summarize some of the things we find out, so it's about a 30-point survey, and it's literally, we ask questions. Who are you? How many are in your household? And I use, my rabbit ears with that. And we actually start talking about what are some of your precipitating factors. What is it? Because people typically don't choose homelessness. The symptoms of their life has chosen that situation. And so who are these individuals? They're typically, we find that we have more males than females. It's less families, though there is a high incidence of homelessness amongst families that we count through our school districts. It is quite often individuals who do self-identify with some mental health or substance abuse concerns. And we also have, another piece of our homelessness is our veteran population. So really to ask who they are humans first and foremost, right? And I'm all about that people first language. And we always talk about, I know, let me have my moment. We always talk about homeless people. Well, we don't talk about cancer people. So it's the same kind of concept. So it's important to phrase that as these are people that are experiencing homelessness, that it is often a symptom or an outcome of their life.
Okay. Percentages, if we get, and again, just to ease the conversation as we move forward here, was I about right? 30% true mental health individuals, people who, whether schizophrenia or whatever phrenias are attached to that individual, would that be a rough estimate?
This is a very hotly debated topic. There are some people who would tell you every single person who is chronically and persistently homeless must have some mental illness or substance use disorder. The point in time count, we rely on people's self-report. And so you might expect what comes out of that, and that may be where your 30% number comes from, might be a little low.
It's hard. We're doing the research. It's hard to track down specifics.
It is difficult because we don't always have a chance to examine those people and offer services. We will most assuredly concede that we would say the majority of people out there have a need. What the police group found as well was many of them have chronic and sometimes acute physical health problems as well. And so largely they have a need. And many of them do have mental illness or substance use disorder, and some have all three.
Okay. What's our total number of homeless estimate in Fresno County from your census taking?
So the point in time, which isn't necessarily all of Fresno County, but it's the city of Fresno as well as Madera. So in the 2017 point in time count, the total was 1,745 individuals that were identified during that point in time as either sheltered homeless or unsheltered homeless.
Okay. Now, Steve, you had your finger going up.
Because a couple of things I'd like to throw in, so that your viewers will know. There's some good news in this, and that is if the point in times probably a decade ago would have shown probably into the 4,000 or 5,000 range, right? It was substantially more folks being counted. So we do this annual count, and I'd like to throw in that through the work of these ladies and others, all of our partners, the number of homeless has been coming down. Now we've experienced a slight uptick over last year. Okay, but so it's not all terrible. There's been a lot of great work done. There's more that needs to be done, but we're seeing the number of homeless in large volume has been decreased over the last decade. So I want to give a hand to everybody who is working with the homeless. I'd also like to add that when I came to putting together my no camping ordinance, I relied heavily on Sergeant Dewey of the Police Homeless Task Force. And that's his full-time job. And he says that out of the 1,740, there's about 500 or 600 folks that just choose to be out camping in a camping lifestyle. Now, honestly, after a conversation with Dawan that I had with her last week, there's some debate, and I'm willing to challenge that number. Okay, but I as a council member, one of the things that I get stuck in, Chris, is relying upon experts, and what I found in the homelessness conversation is sometimes I have multiple experts that don't even agree, and definitions are different from what this group is using versus what this group is using. So, but we do know that we run across people that we give offers of help, and those offers are flatly declined often, and for whatever reason, and I'm not out to make a judgment on why, if they're mentally ill or high or whatever, but many times those offers are declined, right? And so people want to continue with these behaviors for whatever reason, and my ordinance is about saying, no, we're not going to enable that by allowing these behaviors. So we're no longer going to be the enablers. And what you talked about maybe 15 minutes ago, you talked about compassion, and so this is maybe more of a tough love approach. Now, some people repel at that phrase, tough love, right? But in essence, we're no longer going to be part of the enabling process.
I was doing a little bit of research, like Utah doesn't have much of the homeless problem. Apparently, they got tough, as you're saying. They set up encampments that were more industrial areas, further away from the public. It became something where the handouts weren't so easy. It just wasn't good enough. They moved on to other places. You look at Clovis, and I hear stories all the time that they hand deliver their homeless to Willow, and then say go that way. It's like a Rambo movie all over again. North Fresno, you don't get too much. I mean, River Park, yes, the main thoroughway there of Blackstone, but as you start going into the more affluent neighborhoods, you don't see much. And so I'm thinking, how does that happen? I'm assuming that the North Fresno, everybody knows that there's a slight favoritism towards North Fresno, the tax money. I mean, I'm not trying to be controversial.
I really gotta disagree with that on a couple of things that you said.
Go for it.
And I don't care about the preconceptions. I can understand that in all reality, North Fresno raises a lot of the tax money, but it gets spent in South Fresno. So that's just flat out the truth.
Okay.
For instance, the city of Fresno is going to take in $70 million in cap and trade money from the state of California. Has to be spent within 2 or 3 miles of downtown Fresno. So many dollars are spent elsewhere, okay?
Well, we've been seeing that. Downtown Fresno, and in last week's show, we were talking about high-speed rail, and the word that's being thrown out now, the gentrification part, and that's where I've seen a lot of the homeless started moving north, and I think Tower right now is really getting. That's where it seems like everything's kind of coming to a head there.
Yeah,
the north doesn't want them go down south. The downtown, we're trying to make it pretty, go up north, and then there's Tower going, hey, wait a minute, guys.
You know, it's really weird, Chris, because I heard from countless individuals from the Tower, and I did a video specific to the Tower district. When I walked downtown in the streets of the Tower, we saw a lot of people camping within about a block or a half a block of Olive Avenue. So, you know, I didn't see a lot of tents right on Olive, but right behind all those businesses, people are just crashed out all during the day. And so we heard a lot from the Tower, but really, Chris, if I can't let it go that I'm getting a lot of calls from Northwest Fresno. So Sergeant Dewey and the captain that oversees Northwest Fresno would tell you that the problem exists. Now, I'm not naive, and I'm not going to compare Northwest Fresno to downtown Fresno, where the services are, where most of the services are. So you do see a larger conglomeration of folks, you know, near where the services are, and that just is what it is. But we're getting pounded in North Fresno. Trust me.
I do believe it's everywhere. I'm making generic statements based off, things that either driving around I see or what people say on Facebook. And I know Facebook is, that is the gold definition of truth.
Right.
But you can kind of get a finger on the pulse of people. And there are certain groups like Please Stop Crime and the Tower District group. I think you just joined that one, actually.
Right.
There's groups all over that you kind of get the feel. I have a neighborhood watch group that I'm a part of just for this neighborhood alone. And I know we've been getting hit a lot. My parents live across the street, and I've grown up here since I was 3 years old. I'm 37 now. And the things that I'm seeing now when I move back into the neighborhood, we're seeing the people, and it usually starts with the people who are diving through the trash cans, but this was stuff that was not around when I was growing up, and it's definitely a changing world. It's an evolving world. There's no specific place. So I'm sorry, it's not being fair saying the affluent north is you don't see them. I think things might get dealt with, or if it's an inhospitable area, you're not going to stick around because the people who are maybe like I know somebody who's at First and Fresno and Bullard. He's got a beautiful baby daughter, but he loves meth. And, I graduated high school with that guy, and I just can't look at him in the face anymore. He's where he is because he can be more comfortable using there on that corner because people just ignore him. You drop him off there, Beheimer or something, he gets shushed away pretty quick because the neighborhood, the community does not approve of that. Now we're kind of talking about people, again, more like human trash, and it's so easy to slide into that because these are the things you don't want to see. I'm driving my son to Manchester Gate, and we're seeing people laying on sidewalks sleeping, and he's asking questions. As a 7-year-old, this is a tough discussion. It's tough to me to do it right now at 37. Now let me explain it to a 7-year-old. And I know I'm not changing the world here tonight, but throwing out ideas, learning, getting some knowledge, and then, as you said, resources. I said I'll come back to this. I want to know resources that you guys would need in the mental health side. Dawan and Karen, what would you Karen, you're hands-on, so you know the limitations your job provides you. Dawan, you're in administration. You hear all of them say the limitations, and you know what your budget and freedoms are and where you're limited. And Steve, you get everything. Mm-hmm. So is there something here that can be worked on with the three of us, or ideas of to help balance out? Because if it's just 30%, just using round figures, out of 1745 that you said from point of time math, you're talking 600 people off the street. That makes a big dent right off the bat if there's a place to put them. And I know we have resources: Poverello House, Rescue the Children, Marjorie Mason, Lighthouse, all these
charities. We have lots of partners. Wouldn't you ladies say we have a lot of great people and organizations, Chris, that are really focused on bringing help?
What would it take to increase it to help to do a goal trying to eliminate at least mental health needs?
For the people that we're talking about, they typically have complex needs that I alluded to earlier. It's rarely one thing. It's rarely just mental illness. It could be a conglomeration of things. So the map point that I referenced earlier was one. We have a group that's been in existence for about 7 years now called Community Conversations Around Mental Health. It actually started, and I was a part of that group before I was the department head for the county. That is hospitals and the behavioral health court judge and community-based providers and universities and all law enforcement that recognizes that to solve the issues of mental health, it's going to take more than just one sector. No one sector could solve these problems, or it would be solved if it was that simple. And so out of the work of that group, the MAP point concept came up. And MAP stands for Multi-Agency Access Program. And the first MAP was at the POB, and it was funded largely with city and county housing funds and the housing authorities, in-kind donations. And really that location was designed to address homeless individuals. And the concept is that people come in and they get screened across a variety of domains, recognizing that they may have mental health needs, physical health, substance use disorder. They may have no access to transportation. They may need housing. Have they signed up for any social services that they are eligible for? And that could be Medi-Cal or general relief funds or Social Security, et cetera. And then it's staffed by navigators, and those navigators are assigned to help that person when they score on the screening tool that they need help somewhere, to link them to services. And we're very intentional with the word linkage. We don't mean handing someone a piece of paper and saying, here's the 5 places you can go to get that. It's here's where you're going to go on this day at this time, and if you need help getting there, we'll get you there. And it's been pretty successful as far as people accessing it. But it's not a overnight or in that day solution. So, for instance, the form you have to complete to qualify for subsidized housing is like this thick, right? Like 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. And you have to have an ID card. And when someone comes in with their...
right there. Let's. I've heard ID card, I've heard birth certificate, social security number, things like that. The identifying factors of people. And I know we can go even further and peeling that onion. Now we're talking undocumented potential. Like this could get real ugly.
But actually our navigators help people. They help them procure their birth certificate and take them to the DMV.
But how
get the
easy
ID
does
card.
that actually work? If someone has no paperwork on them whatsoever, how do they get identified? How do they get that card and go through that process?
We find out where they were born. We write off for their birth certificate. They get their birth certificate in. They take it down to the DMV. They get the ID card.
How long does that usually take turnaround time?
It can take months, and this is my point. So when people hear MAP and they think this is the solution to homelessness, there really has to be a recognition of what MAP was designed for. It was to help people deal with complicated issues that are not overnight solutions. And so if someone goes out to the street, you're not going to solve that problem overnight for that person. So the MAP is designed to identify the domains where there might be issues and methodically help that person through those issues. But definitely, if you take someone to the MAP point today, they're not going to walk away housed. And so if you use that as your solution to the homeless problem, you are expecting it to solve a problem it wasn't designed to solve. And so we took that concept, and over the last several months, we have expanded the MAP program to many different locations where we're hoping to interact with people who are underserved. That could be a geographical location. It could be a population. So we have a map in Selma now, and we have a map through Central La Familia, and we're funding the POV map now. And the POV is using their food truck as a map location. So it's going to help. It's a longer-term solution to helping. And more importantly, the resource we need, the question you asked, the biggest resource we need is housing, by far.
How do we get there?
Which is exactly what I was going to jump into is what do we need? So you're right. We've got great teams that are doing that document readiness, and it can take anywhere from a week up to 3 months to when we have to work with multiple agencies, out-of-state agencies, to help somebody become document ready. But really what the biggest piece is, and what we hear from individuals and staff that we have at the Poverello House, that we have out working in the streets engaging, is we house to where? House to what? Mm-hmm. So we get people, we've got them document ready, they are ready to accept that engagement, but we are missing kind of that transitional piece the step before that permanent supportive housing. Because one of the biggest frustrations in the street is I'm working with somebody, but they don't have an address that I can return to every day to continue to engage them. So I spend a lot of my time looking for the person that I'm engaging.
You're just chasing a lost puppy at that point.
Exactly.
I don't know what's going on. I read something about there's a $4 billion low-income housing thing going through right now, nationwide, federal, whatever. Is that something that has anything to do that we can use? And I'm just spitballing from a guy who, like, okay, I hear a problem, let's try to solve something. By the way, I read something on CNN, so maybe that's a thing. I mean, any idea? Because that's how I go. I attack problems in that sense. I heard you, Dawan, talking about the map point and all that stuff, and it feels like even as you explain it, you hate it.
Oh, no. I like the map point. What I hate is there is no magic, silver bullet here. And everyone's looking for the quick fix. Everyone's looking for something that's going to solve the problem for everyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm impatient. I do the quick fix thing.
And so my frustration that you might hear coming through is that the map isn't the quick fix. And I don't want the map to fail because we expected it to do something it wasn't designed to do. It's one small piece of many other efforts going on. The crisis intervention team is part of that. We have rural crisis triage clinicians that address these issues for people outside of the city of Fresno and Clovis. We will have access in the coming years to a source of funding that we don't have access to now. A year ago, May, the governor signed into legislation through the May revise of the budget an initiative called No Place Like Home. And it makes available through leveraging of Mental Health Service Act funds, Prop 63, the millionaire's tax, $2 billion in funds to create permanent supportive housing for individuals who have mental illness and who are either chronically homeless, transiently homeless, or at risk of homelessness. And you mentioned this, Chris, and I want to make this clear. A lot of the federal funds available for housing are reserved for people who are chronically homeless. And a lot of our clients are at risk of homelessness. They're couch surfing. They're with a family that's getting to the end of their rope. They're aging out of foster care. There's lots of underlying reasons why homelessness might be on their horizon if we don't intervene. And so these funds will help us hopefully build some housing in our area.
So you don't get to deal with just who's out in the street. You get to pick up the whole.
Oh, we have everyone.
The preseason, like you guys are getting ready for the big season of being homeless. That's
well, we're trying to tackle it from both ends. So when we talk about what the Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Health is, we're doing prevention and early intervention. We're screening. We're treating. We're, we have services that we pay for that go up to state hospital. And one person in a state hospital bed is about $250,000 a year out of our budget. So obviously it's in our best interest to prevent people getting to that most high acuity. And so, yes, the population we serve includes people who happen to be homeless with mental illness, but that's a small subset of the population we serve. And more importantly, our goal is to keep the next person from becoming homeless. And so these No Place Like Home funds, we think in Fresno County, and it's based on this point-in-time count, so we want it to be accurate, that we will be eligible in a competitive grant process, which means we have to write a grant and get the funds for up to $25 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, but we also have to provide supportive services to people. And as I mentioned earlier, people who have the most severe symptoms of mental illness often need a lot of support. Some of it's financial support, some of it's what we call case management services, making sure they paid their bills, got to their doctor's appointment, filled their prescription, to stay stable in housing, to keep that housing. And some landlords are quick to kick our population out if any of those things start to fall apart, and then they're homeless again. So many challenges, many opportunities, but there are some funds coming our way, we hope, to help solve the inventory of housing.
I have a question on housing. Now, back when Sheriff Mims was on here, I brought it up with her. So, Steve, I know you're friends with her. You brought her here that night. Don't tell her I said this because I don't want to deal with her wrath.
You got it. Our secret.
It's only on the internet. the housing or the encampments. And we're talking the ones that go underneath the freeway, the ones that every couple of years that we close out and the lotto ticket ding goes out. I asked why isn't that a suitable setup for them as a temporary as to get somewhere, because now you got everybody's coming together in one area. And I know she talked about all the stuff that goes on, the abuse, the rape, the crime, the all the bad that does happen. But I was thinking, if you have someone like a Karen and a team of armed Karens around her that could go in every day, you're not chasing down the lost puppy. They're all there. You have a support staff. So it's kind of like, if they're not comfortable going to Poverello or to Fresno Rescue Mission, because there's a religious aspect, and I've heard that too. People don't want to deal with the religion thing. I think ultimately they don't want to get clean. If there's a place where they can all congregate, they're kind of out of the way, so that takes care of the people who don't want to see them, that negative side that we started this whole show with. But it allows, it's a place that they can set up and do their stuff instead of spread out everywhere. That now, if we can actually get a group that daily goes in and checks on everybody, helps out. Someone's being abused, then we can grab them and put them in jail because they've done something legitimately wrong, and that solves some of the anger, Steve, that people came to you, criminalizing homelessness. Is that a thing that can happen, or is it just it's like, as Margaret Mims said, the sheriff said, that's just a no, and you can't do it. Am I out of my mind here, Steve?
Well, I'd make a few comments, and then I'd love to hear these ladies' view as well. So definitely, I think what Sheriff Mims was referring to is the type of encampment that we had 5 years ago in the city of Fresno. It actually happened the first summer that I was a council member, and we had a lot of discussions about homelessness because those camps were really unhealthy cesspools for everybody. And the homeless people that were there were actually the greatest victims inside those camps. So we had gangs that had infiltrated the camps. You might know that some of these folks, although they're homeless, they'll still get a monthly check of SSI or some little pot of money. We got to where the gangs knew the day that the piece of mail was going to be delivered, right? And then they would go swift talk, do a quick deal, sell that homeless person something for their check, for the fistful of dollars that they got to help them through, And so they were really it was just really negative. And so we had to do something about that. And then also they were all congregating in one area of town, which that area of town, Southwest Fresno, was tired of that. They were saying it's not fair for us to have this burden on just one area of town. So those encampments necessarily had to be broken apart. They weren't viable. Now, many people have come and said there's other versions of those types of camps. And about 4 or 5 years ago, when I first became council member, I remember being taken to Starbucks by one of our professionals from the Housing Authority, and he said, "Steve, this is wonderful. We're just about to go on a 3 or 4 city tour across the country. We're going to look at San Antonio. We're going to look at Houston. I can't remember. There's a couple of other places where there were more of a legitimate type of camp where the city provided the infrastructure, restrooms and a kitchen and stuff like that, and a walled fencing with security, that type of thing." And this was just 4 years ago. And now that same guy just walks away from that model. And that model had difficulties. Now, I'm not an expert in that model, but now I'm repeating what I've been told by other professionals.
You got me excited there for a second.
Yeah, people have walked away from that model, and the latest model is called Housing First, and it's not just nationwide, but it's worldwide in many urban cities, right? It's the idea is to get people into housing and then help them, right? So people have walked away, Chris, from that model that you're kind of alluding to of why can't we have kind of a cool encampment where people are safe and secure. Now, others would tell you that it's still viable. That's part of the clash that I hear. Now, I have to step back from that and let the experts kind of deal with that. I'm not an expert in that.
Well, actually, as you were saying that, I see the faces here between our ladies. Go ahead. I know we were going to jump in on the housing or the encampment stuff. Your thoughts on that?
As far as the encampment goes, I really would defer to the city and Sheriff Mims in terms of how would you police it? What's the infrastructure? We do know that there were terrible things happening in those encampments. Some people would argue there's terrible things happening now in other smaller encampments. And so I will take this opportunity to say I appreciate the frustration of the City Council and Councilmember Brandau and the desire to change something that's going to make a difference. We may not agree whether or not the camping ban will be the piece that makes the difference, but definitely I think that we need to take the energy and enthusiasm around doing something and try and find something we can all agree on is going to make a difference. A lot of the work that we're doing is around methodically, and that's my frustration. It takes time. The government, as I've learned in my 4 years, is incredibly bureaucratic. It's bureaucratic because that's how we designed it. I'll leave it at that. As far as models go, there are models out there. Lots of different cities have different models, and every city's a little different, and you go and you visit them. And I've been to San Antonio, where the Haven for Hope is. That is the model that Steve described. That model was started with a $10 million private donation. And so, that is seen by some as a barrier. We don't have that $10 million donation. The map point was at least our initial effort to take a piece of the Haven for Hope, which essentially co-locates those service agencies to provide the services someone would need. So our first attempt was to say, well, what services do people need, and how do we link them to those services and not, give them a piece of paper and good luck in getting there. There is a lot of differings of opinion on a shelter location or the concept of a shelter or what a shelter is. For us, we definitely feel like we need more housing options for the clients we serve who aren't yet document ready for housing, or that they are ready for housing. We call it document ready. When
like a holding pen, but not in the jail sense.
A transitional housing location.
That's much better.
A location where they can stay and get the services they need while they're awaiting their permanent supportive housing. Research has definitively shown that for someone with mental illness, the house helps them more with their stability than treatment. That's just a fact. And so we know that we want them to get that housing, but they have to have a place to stay while they're getting the housing. And so we are working actively right now on strategies with funds that we have and leveraging other entities in the community that might offer supportive services or transportation or that type of thing to create some housing.
Do we have a number right now on what you guys get budget-wise every year, Fresno County Mental Health Services?
Yeah, the Department of Behavioral Health Services get our budget for this last fiscal year, because we haven't approved this next year's budget, is about $190 million.
$190 million a year.
Yes. And with that, we serve, 25 to 30,000 people.
I understand it sounds like a lot, so...
It does.
But
it's a scary amount.
And you have a structure, and, that kind of system is also very similar to the government system you were alluding to earlier. There's a bureaucracy. There's things people are getting paid that maybe don't need to be getting paid. Jobs, and I don't want to be specific on this. I think we all understand the back and forth. Money probably mismanaged all the way down. So that 190 may not get its full potential. Money spent on mental health services, percent on the dollar is what I'm going for. I'd like to see, a dollar goes to a dollar, and I understand in the real world that does not happen. $190 million, you say $10 million for a City of Hope setup out there. Steve, we got you here because, at the same time, maybe we can work on an idea to start helping, because the ball's going. As long as you keep putting out videos on Facebook and keep people mad at you, we might be able to keep this in attention of people for a while.
Chris, what's really funny is I had a lot of people that came to me and said, Steve, we totally disagree with your no camping ordinance. However, the one thing that has happened is you've brought the conversation forward, and now a lot of people are talking, and a lot of people are interested in solutions, right? So if that's the end result of the no camping ordinance, I'm even good with that. I want to say a couple of things. You mentioned the effectiveness of the dollar, right? And this is something that I brought up at City Council meeting when we voted on this last week for the final vote. It was a 2-vote process. There's a lot of strings attached to government money. And these ladies would probably agree, and they have to play by the rules that are given to them. One thing that I brought up is all of this money has to be spent using prevailing wage, right? So here's a problem, Chris. If your goal is to help these 1,750 folks that are out on the streets of Fresno and Madera, and you want to provide housing for them, right now, the last couple of projects that have come to us through the Housing Authority have been apartment units that are costing about $225,000 a unit, right? So how many folks are you helping? I mean, when you're
one family at a time,
million sounds like a lot of money, but when you're starting to use almost $250,000 per unit.
Well, yeah, for $1 million, you've housed 6, 7, 8 people.
Right. And so I would love to see that prevailing wage string.
I just got a finger.
Yeah, I'd love to see that disassociated with this problem. I mean, this is where you get when it's all government all the time coming up with a solution.
But go ahead, Dawan.
Okay, so what I'll say here, and I have no comment on the prevailing wage because that's a separate issue, but I do want to be clear to everyone that $225,000 for a unit in a housing authority is a little bit of a misrepresentation, because that isn't the cost to build the unit. That's the cost to build and operate the unit over many, many years. They have to capitalize their operating costs and operating subsidies. So if the rent coming in for that unit doesn't cover the operating costs, they've capitalized those costs to pull down a reserve to cover that operating cost. And that's what goes into the $225,000. So it's kind of like if you and I buy a house and it's $225,000, we don't pay $225,000 for that house and to live there. We pay millions to live in that house when we pay mortgage interest and insurance and PG&E and all of those things. And so I appreciate it's a lot of money, and I appreciate the issue of prevailing wage, but let's just be clear what we're talking about here when we say that that's the cost to build a unit.
Okay. And so then, Chris, then the reality is, if it's so easy, why aren't we building any housing? So let's just ask, you need to have the Housing Authority in here and ask how many units they're going to bring online in 2017, right? You're going to be shocked how low the number is of units that we're actually trying to help a population that is crying for more units. So this all gets back to what Dawan said about 20 minutes ago when she was talking about Map Point. And I agree, and I see her frustration. I understand that. When you come to Map Point, which what my ordinance helps push people to Map Point, you can't house them overnight because there's no housing stock for them. And then you want to pull out your hair, if you had any hair. You want to pull out your hair saying, why can't we get more housing? And there's a lot of log jams, government log jams, that really stop that from doing what I think every one of us in this room want. By the way, as a conservative, I buy into the housing first idea. I agree with Dawan. We need to get these folks in a permanent setting where they can then add the services. And I agree with the professionals, but the truth is not happening.
I just, on our internet feed here, someone popped in with tiny homes. I know those things. I saw the tour, $10,000 estimate, rough. You know, we were talking $225,000, whatever, and however it gets to that number, that's a lot of tiny homes. And
already a failing strategy, Chris. It's already failing.
Yeah,
so
this sucks.
You take San Jose, our neighbors to the north, San Jose. They had talked about 56 units or something like that of tiny housing. It's down to 448 units now. It's not working. The community doesn't want it, and so it becomes very difficult. So these are all strategies. They're throwing darts at the wall, hoping something sticks, and already people are walking away from the tiny house model.
There are some communities doing tiny homes that I'm aware of, but they are not government built and run.
Well, private.
And honestly, that the tiny house strategy is one of those things that I would be the first to say, don't get government involved. There's too many rules and regulations. There's constraints on our funding.
Is there anything
we would muck it up
that can work involving the privates? Now we're talking the Fresno Rescue Mission, things like that. The idea of the City of Hope. any way to combine, or is that separation of church and state too strong? You cannot cross over? Because I'm looking, Fresno Rescue Mission, I know that building's getting knocked down. High-speed rail's coming through. Jerry Brown likes to throw as much money, whatever BS tax he calls it, into high-speed rail. Can't we just, use some of that money to expand Fresno Rescue Mission's new building, create the City of Hope? Everyone's working together, and if we really want to be that city that is the center point of this state, as we're connecting L.A. to San Francisco and up north through this train that's never going to happen. If we want to be that city, don't we want to be doing the City of Hope? Don't we want to be the beacon of light to try to eliminate as much of the homeless issue as possible? Because, we're making everything shiny in downtown, and money is coming in. And as the poverty level right now in San Francisco, $120,000 means you're poor. Those people are going to start moving in. They're going to start building. They're going to start expecting this city to start appearing more like how they want to live. So as we're just shining up this Fresno area, the fifth biggest population in California, isn't there a way that this can all work out, private and public, or am I just a crazy man who drinks way too much?
Well, going back to no place like home, the challenge for us, and I'm just going to be frank, we're a behavioral health department. We're not housing developers, and yet we're going to be tasked with developing housing. And so we're going to have to rely on subject matter experts to assist us in this process. We do anticipate that there will, I think the flaw we all go down is that, again, there's one solution. So I think we will partner with the Housing Authority on some of that, but it won't just be the Housing Authority. We'd like to see if we can rehab some of the, units that are failing already in Fresno and find if there's a way. Just to give you an example of some of the constraints with our funding. So this wonderful No Place Like Home funding, but you can't use it to fund a unit that more than 49% of the units are for people with mental illness, unless it's less than 20 units. There's all these different rules around it. And so we are going to have to be creative. We are going to have to partner and collaborate. And we do have a good core group in Fresno that's been working together a long time to try and come up with solutions. We're not done. We keep trying. And funding is being made available through different mechanisms. We do need to leverage that funding. And we need to diversify as much as possible. We know that we have issues with room and boards. They're not regulated in our community, and we rely on room and boards for a lot of our population. We have to figure out a way to improve the quality of that housing. We know with the Somerset issue that there's existing housing units that get counted that are not good, and that contributes to the problem. So it's going to take all of those things.
Is there anything that we can take out of this here tonight? I mean, I'm just taxpayer gas bag on a microphone. The three of you really are involved in doing something. I'm just trying to get you together for our listeners and just, again, the way I think I want to sit down with people who are way smarter than me and know way more and throw out ideas. And it sounds like a lot of my ideas in my mind sound great and then come out of the reality is just not there. Is there anything here that can work?
I don't want to be discouraging about some of the ideas that you've had and that many other communities, as I said, have had. I think we're going to have to try some of these things here. It can't all come from government. I think the private sector, if they want to solve the problem, has to get some skin in the game as well and help us solve these problems. Again, our mission is beyond solving homelessness. We are providing crisis services, inpatient services. We already provide housing for people. We provide treatment, medication. There's all kinds of things that we provide to our community, and the homeless population is a small population that we serve. So you hear our budget number, and that sounds great, but there's all kinds of things that we do with that money. But we're willing to partner, and we're willing to leverage those funds. And there are many government and community-based organizations that already do this work that we can rely on. But we're all going to have to do things differently if we're really going to solve this problem.
I like what you said there, and I had that idea, Fresno Rescue Mission. Let's work with that, the high-speed rail money, because that's just money being thrown at anything. So let's just take it and use it for something.
That'd be great, but we'd probably be lynched if you set a finger on it. You mentioned a lot of things, Chris. I just want to make a couple of off-the-cuff comments, okay? City of San Francisco, colossal fail. Okay, over the last decade, they're at about $1 billion on homelessness. You go up there, smells like a urinal. Okay, your viewers know all what I'm talking about. Now, it's not down there at on Market Street, or it's not at Fisherman's Wharf, but you get one block off the beaten path, buddy, it's trouble.
Oh, yeah, no.
Los Angeles declaring an emergency. Well, they stopped short of declaring an emergency, but they're raising a bond. They're going to throw a lot of money at the types of things that you're suggested. Up and down the West Coast, Seattle, colossal fail. The mayor just declared an emergency. Okay, this problem. So here's one of our things that we're facing. This is what I heard, and you ladies might tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm relying on things that I've heard from other professionals. The state of California has about 44% of the nation's homeless, right? We're great weather. It's a beautiful place to live.
Not
There's
recently.
lots of services, and even though we're tonight talking about needing more services, but there's lots of services. So this is all happening up and down the West Coast, as well as almost every urban city in the world, okay, is facing this. It's not just a Fresno-centric problem. We're trying our best, with limited resources. I think that's what these ladies are saying. That's what many of our service providers last week were saying when we were having this discussion at council.
Okay.
And let me just say, because I need to correct you, you implied that there's a lot of waste in that $190 million.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. It's just in general, when you get, as you said, when you get government involved, you don't get a dollar on the dollar.
Bureaucracy definitely cuts in to the resources we have for the people we serve, and I would acknowledge that. But I do feel that we're using our funds pretty well. There are more opportunities, and we have some funds we're going to use towards that. But I just needed to correct you.
No, I apologize. I'm a loudmouth. I shoot off at the hip sometimes, and I get in trouble. Steve knows, right?
Yeah, I hear you. I do the same. I would like to say a couple of other things about my ordinance, okay? And the first thing I'm going to say is really going to probably cause people to go crazy and retweet and Facebook me again.
Phone lines are open. 49204.
Right, phone lines are open. Let's hear from some of your listeners and viewers. So the truth is, Chris, and I know we're talking about homeless tonight, and we all have empathy for people that are in a tough spot. But really, my ordinance is not about the 1,745 people in the city of Fresno that need this help. That's a secondary. I built some things into my ordinance that I believe can help them, okay, which you've mentioned. But really, it's about the 500,000 people that are crying out, like these business owners that I've heard from. They're saying, don't you guys even know there's a problem? And it's my job to do something about it. Now, I don't actually believe that my no camping ordinance is an end-all to be-all. It's a sliver. It addresses one little group of activities, okay? I feel for these ladies and the others who are frustrated because they wish they could house these people immediately, right? And I wish they could too. But I can't do that. Now, city, just so your viewers know, and this is what I meant when I made some comments from the dais about the county of Fresno, and I didn't, and I was using that very generically. I think you guys are doing great. But the thing is, the city of Fresno has no money essentially to throw at this problem. We were really glad to scrape together $500,000 to bring forth the hero team, be a part of that effort, okay? But the money that you're talking about, what we really need is your viewers to come up with the $10 million. That would be really fantastic.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm not making any money here.
Right.
Let's
I hear you. And so you're in the same spot that we're in. Limited resources, and yet you have a problem. You have to address it. So I also wanted to say, because there's been some misconception about the ordinance, it's not a sweep of the homeless, okay? Nobody's starting at the San Joaquin River, although we have a lot of problems on the San Joaquin River. Nobody's starting at the San Joaquin River and moving across town arm in arm, removing all the homeless. That's not what this ordinance is about. It's about a tool that can be employed in certain cases where it's almost a last-ditch effort to do something about a problem, okay?
So you didn't create an ordinance that would put people in the black outfits and turn everyone to Soylent Green?
No, exactly. Right.
Internet goes crazy with you.
But even saying that, I have to admit, and I said this from the dais last week, and it was not my intention, but we probably caught some of our partners, and I'm not referring to the ladies here tonight, but we probably caught some of our partners flat-footed, right? And they're kind of repelled by my ordinance. I get it. They're very worried that we don't have beds for folks, that we don't have all the services ready right now for the folks. I want to let these people that believe that know that this is not a sweep. I don't see like we're going to bring 250 people to your doorstep and you have to do something about it and don't look at us. We just brought them here. I don't think that's really
part
going to
of
happen.
Tonight. And again, the reason why I chose specifically who I wanted to bring in is there a conversation to be had here? And from my dumb side of stuff, simplifying things, you're the teams that would have the answers. And we do have a caller. Let's hope this goes well. Hello, you're on with hashtag DDP Live.
Hi, I had a question for kind of a follow-up for one of the ladies.
Yes.
I was wondering, she mentioned that she wanted to see the private parties step up, and I wanted to know what she would like the private sector to do.
Well, it's a number of things. When I mentioned about developing housing, and we're not subject matter experts in that, there are subject matter experts on the private side. Investing in affordable housing, particularly housing for people who were formerly homeless or with mental illness, is not always a positive business investment. And so getting the private side to come up with creative ideas or leveraging funding, using some of the tax credits and such, is one way that I think there could be private side involvement. There are different faith-based groups and such that I know are doing work, and we're looking for opportunities to collaborate and leverage with those groups. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
That answer your question?
Yeah, has there been any interest from, local developers, the Granvilles, Barnadellis, that kind of folks to get involved in this area?
They haven't approached me. I've talked to some of the developers in town at different times, primarily when I first took this position, to understand what resources might be available out there. The funding that we're going to be getting is coming in about a year or so, and so those are conversations that we hope to have over the coming months.
Steve had something to jump in with.
Yeah, and I would say that in reality, a lot of the solution is coming from private donations. Okay, so I don't want to say we do need more. And I have no problem joining these ladies and calling for more help from the private sector. But we have a very generous community, okay? And a lot of people are volunteering their time, as just like the point in time count that Karen had mentioned. A lot of people are spending their whole weekend out helping. And then throughout the year, a lot of people are giving money. And there's a lot of groups we haven't even named tonight who are doing fantastic things in the city of Fresno. And so there's a lot of private involvement already. And I do know that there are private developers that are interested in helping. So they've got to find the right pathway. And they probably are thinking, how can we get the most bang for our buck and help the most number of people? And I know that they're on the sidelines really mulling this over, and a lot of them have called me in the last week and said, great conversation, we're going to find a way of getting involved. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
All right. Any other questions?
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you for the call. Now, we're going to have to wrap this up here soon. I know we were going to take a break and everything, but I just kind of ran with it. Karen, you were dying to say something.
So just to piggyback onto the idea of the collaboration, many models for the private sector, it's about that sticks and bricks funding, right? Building that actual, the structure, the stick and the brick. And I really appreciate that Dawan is guiding this department to start thinking about the strategy. We've talked a lot tonight about obtaining housing, but there is a whole other show here talking about how we sustain housing. When you move an individual with a serious mental illness into housing, while it helps in their recovery, it does not take away the signs and symptoms of their mental illness. And so part of our strategy, and to be really successful, to not only move people into housing to check the box that we're reducing our homelessness, but it's really about also providing those on-site and those supportive services so people can be successful in that housing and then eventually be able to move into other housing that maybe doesn't have that level of support. So we're creating a true continuum. So I just bring that up because that's a piece that sometimes is more difficult to identify with the funding. It ties into the cost per unit. It's not just the stick and the brick, but it's the support that actually helps that tenant be successful.
Okay. Anything to add here to close up? Look, this is a show I think we could sit here for the next 24 hours, right? And then
Surely.
also be at the same exact spot. Obviously it's a frustrating issue. I'd like to say, Steve, please keep going on the videos, but let's work together, come up with this idea, because if your videos can get that much interest just by standing outside water pouring somewhere, maybe we can get that 10 million. You got it much easier than anything I can do here. And obviously it sounds like there needs to be some working together. Plus, apparently, the Housing Authority needs to be getting involved in this as well. These are things that from the radio idiot here that just puts together a show, I have no idea. And I love doing these because it's a learning experience for me every single time I get a guest like Steve or you ladies in here, the Margaret Mims of the world. It's always something new, and I want to do something for Fresno, anything I can. This is my platform. This is the best I can offer. So any final things from you ladies?
One little plug for the Housing Authority, because I was sitting next to the executive director today, and I asked this question. I think it's worth saying. In the last 9 years, they've built about 2,400 units in Fresno. And if you figure roughly on average 3 people per unit, that's 7,200 individuals housed. When they recently opened for new applications, there were 40,000 applicants. And that really helps to, I think, illustrate, to Councilmember Brandau's point, yes, there's a big delta there between the need and the available housing. The Housing Authority is working on veterans housing, which I think we can all agree is very important in our community and across our nation. And they have many, many developments in the pipeline. And so, but it's not enough. And they are really probably one of the more successful housing authorities across the United States. And so if that's not enough, we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. There has to be different models tried and additional housing units built in our community. And let me emphasize, affordable housing, not just for the population we serve. The population we serve doesn't get their needs met because there's too many people without mental illness and substance use disorder that also need housing. Mm-hmm. And so the housing units that would be available for them are taken. And that's really one last parting thought is we need more affordable, safe, quality housing in Fresno, period. Not just for people who qualify for HUD and Section 8 housing, not just people who are in our system of care.
I think gauntlet's been thrown down, Steve. And sorry, you represent all of City Council tonight, right? You are Lee Brand, you are everyone. But hopefully this is something that you can take back to your fellow City Council members and something, because clearly it's a hot button, not just for those who are in the room tonight who work on it day to day, but as you've seen the last few weeks and how that's gone on Facebook, you've been doing the tours of the radio stations. Mm-hmm. My concern is now that's been done, it's going to go away. No one cares again. Now it's just the people you ignore when you go into 7-Eleven. No, I use my card. I don't have $1, dude. That type of stuff. You can't take the foot off the throat. If there's interest in going on or to talk about homeless and how to solve things, it needs to be constantly put out there in public eye. And I would think if you did any type of survey of Fresno County residents, top 3 homelessness is in there as a concern, whether it's I don't want them around or I care about them. However the words are used, that's still in the mind of everybody. It's just not something that we talk about. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Any final things, Steve?
I would just say thanks, Chris, for facilitating another conversation. I would ask you to trust me that from the mayor on down, many people at City Hall are very passionate about this, and it's not going to go away. These ladies, our other service partners, are very passionate about this. Everybody's, I believe, is doing their best with what they have now. We're also just looking for more and more opportunity. And so I want to thank all of your viewers and your listeners. And I would say there's plenty of places to volunteer. And you can get in contact with these ladies. You could call my office, and we could plug them in if people would like to volunteer to help these folks.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to close this whole thing out. Different show tonight. We changed it all up. I know you were expecting breaks, so were we, and I just went with it. The conversation's rolling as it should. This is not exactly how the show's always going to go here. Of course, next week we got Ken Lewis coming in, the comedian. We're going to get some laughs as the show that you guys, I know a lot of times have expected from me. And more crazy as I've just talked. Apparently, Corey Feldman is going to be in the studio here in about a month. So, I'm bringing the crazy from Hollywood all the way here, and I'll bring all of you back. We can talk to him about his views on stuff. There were things to give away, and there still are. So you can hit me up, 492-0450. Tickets to go see the Good, the Bad, the Ugly, September 8th, and also Brick Madness, September 9th. I have that, so hit me up. And with that, this is Dowdy saying for everyone in the room, word. You've been watching Hashtag DDP Live on Longbox.FM. The opinions expressed on Hashtag DDP Live aren't necessarily those of staff, management, or sponsors of Longbox.FM. If you have been offended in any way during this presentation, you should have turned it off long ago. Hashtag DDP Live is a presentation of Longbox.FM.